Do you like books? I mean, really, really like books? Then you're in the right place. Each week, your host, Sam Hankin, interviews the best of today's top-selling authors and the up-and-coming superstars of modern literature. This is The Avid Reader. Here is your host, Sam Hankin.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another edition of The Avid Reader. Thanks so much for joining us, as you always do, and thanks for supporting Wellington Square Bookshop during this strange time. Today, our guest is Christopher Wilson. Many of his books are in the bookstore, and his new one that we're going to be talking about today, Hurdy Gurdy, is on the front shelf. But since his titles are rather brief, I can tell you all the books he's written. Galamoff's Gospel, Ba, Bluegrass Mischief, Fu, The Word, The Ballad of Lee Cotton, Nookie, and Zoo, and now Hurdy Gurdy. Hurdy Gurdy, it's about our buddy, our hero, Diggory, the plague, and the Hurdy Gurdy. As he, I used to have a dog that was a good dog, and I used to have a collection of plague books and satanic books, like the Satanic Bible by Anton LaVey. But my dog, for some reason, did not like that, and I would come down in the morning, and he would have eaten a portion of one of my plague books. I guess he was like a fundamentalist kind of Baptist. I was living in the South. And so I've lost track of the plague, and it was really good to be brought back up to speed on it. In summary, as Diggory actually enumerates for us towards the end, he was conceived of trickery. He was given to a monastery, killed by the pox, went to hell, went to heaven, befriended a rat, learned the vagaries of women, sentenced to death. He debated Latin with a pig, and he was widowed twice. I could go on, but suffice it to say, he's led a very active life. And we learn of St. Odo, very, very ugly man, who was a seer and not a bestiary. He wrote a bestiary. And then Brother Fulco, who is a piss drinker, also a mentor and a tutor. Brother Michael, who in Marginalia draws the penis tree and its fruit. Simon Mostly, a pivotal portion of a man who figures in parts in the book. Cecilia, a deceased wife, Faith, a deceased wife, and so many more. Diggory survives the plague, but also brings it, and if possible, hilariously. And on his picaresque journey, we follow laughing at Bobos. So welcome, Christopher, and thanks so much for joining us today. Are you there?
I am there. Sorry. So,
Why the
plague? Why the plague?
Yeah. Well, before that, because I'm a bookseller, I'm always interested in covers and epigraphs. For as many times as you can see people say, "Never judge a book by its cover." Everyone who comes in my bookstore, and so it's a lovely cover. Did you vet it? Did you design it? Do you have a copy of it there?
I have a copy of it. Yeah, it just comes to you, and you can suggest changes, but they're often reluctant to entertain them. But as it happens, I love it. The only reservation I had is there's somebody vomiting here, which could be a sort of implicit comment on the book. But so I don't know. It's it's going to be a bodily fluid series, let's see, maybe the next book I have a different fluid, but it's beautiful calligraphy, and it's gold, and it's very striking, and it plays with medieval marginalia, because the central character is a scribe, a monk, and they entertain themselves by doing slightly facetious, improper things in the margins of their texts.
Yes, I had a friend who mastered in marginalia. That was her degree.
There's stuff on Google. There's just a lot of medieval marginalia there.
Yeah, it's funny because it's beautiful. I'm interested when publishers make a beautiful cover, because they must respect the author, and they use that gold, and it's a lovely cover. And I think because selling books, you can see people picking it up as soon as they walk into the store. Right. The second thing I'm always interested in is epigraphs, and there's a bit of an epigraph here by Emily Dickinson. I am out with lanterns looking for myself.
Right.
And I used to.
Letter.
Excuse me?
It comes from a letter rather than one of the poems. But in a way, it's the central theme of the book, because I've always been interested in a sort of philosophy of science and conventionalist notion that you have to subscribe to a system of language, conventions, beliefs, science before you can discuss anything. And by that time you're lost, because actually, you've taken on board a whole system of beliefs of things that perhaps you should be contesting.
Yeah, it's funny because I always loved that quote, but then I realized it was only about her moving day. It wasn't
a moving day, but it's a general metaphor.
Yeah, no? It worked very well. But it's somewhat
that's what we spend our lives doing, looking for ourselves, I think.
Well, I'm still.
But it's with the plague. It's intriguing because they're trying to resolve something that's completely unresolvable within their system, because they don't have the perceptual capacity to see what the causal agent is within the plague. It's a very small bacterium that they can't see, and they're hooked into a theistic model of the world that God is somehow arranging all of this for some purpose, and they think it's carried by smell, so they're going to counter it. It's carried by air, so they're going to counter it with smells. They're going to try really strong smells, or they're going to purify the air, or they're going to try very nasty smells, and it's a really sophisticated culture. These monks have, they speak Latin and Greek, and they've read the classics, and they're just faced with a problem they simply cannot comprehend or resolve.
Yeah, it's funny that at first you read some of the methods they use to attempt to keep the plague away, and you think how silly they are and how funny they are, even though they shouldn't be. And then you think about it, and I was thinking, okay, we're doing the same thing in so many different ways. And then here's the question that you're always going to be asked, and it's your own fault, is St. Odo, let's get the first one out of the way, and the yellow-haired king, the orange face king. Talk about that, and everyone knows what it is, and everyone in the reviews says what it is.
Okay, there's this order of monks, and their founder, St. Odo, wrote 2 big books, and one was a sort of bestiary and every living being in the world, and the other was the Great Book of the Unhappened, because he, like Hildegard of Bingen or whatever, he had sort of intimations of the future, and one was of a orange-skinned, yellow-haired king who said that lies were truths and truths were lies, and the poor should feed themselves and the sick should cure themselves. And I didn't make much of it, but it's a sort of passing reference to your ex-president.
Yeah, and also the fact that his hair was like a helmet.
Yeah. Yeah, it was wound around his head like a helmet.
But St. Odo was quite prescient, because there's so much of his predictions that. Of course, you had the benefit of knowing what actually happened, but he did.
Yeah, I'm a bit ahead of him. Yeah.
But yeah, that was one of, the book is divided into so many different sections, because you have Diggory's first-person narrative, and then you also have accompanying that all of St. Odo's, and to talk a little bit about Fulco, because I mentioned in the introduction, he's not only a mentor and a teacher and a confessor, but we'll talk, it's a scatological novel, much like Tristram Shandy, and talk a little bit about the piss and excrement in general.
Yeah, he said Fulco is the nearest you have to a sort of doctor. So he's a herbalist, and he's a surgeon, and he teaches Diggory the range of cures he has, and one is because they believe in the four humours. Then you test for sickness by tasting the patient's urine, and he's worked out there are 27 versions of piss, and he knows the story and the features of each of them.
The funny thing about your writing and what you said in that review about you don't write to be funny is that just so many things are just funny, whether it's the zoo and Stalin and his doubles, or whether it's this book where the things that are so funny are things that actually happened. There were people who tested. Yeah. And then even when you
Stalin, you know,
go ahead.
It's unfortunate. It's as if I'm expressing, you know, I'm just being sort of facetious about moments of, you know, colossal human suffering, you know, the sort of gulags or the plague. And, you know, this is how it comes out, you know. I don't sit down and think I'm going to write a comic novel. I think I'm writing a novel about events, and humor is part of it.
Well, I could just ask why it's funny, why misery and suffering is funny, but there are certain sentences which are just funny in themselves. Like when you say we're all leaking sacks of sweaty skin, I'm laughing, but I'm not quite sure why I'm laughing. I remember reading a John Barth novel where the hero couldn't have sex because every time he started to have sex, he would start laughing because the act itself was so, you know, insert tab A into slot B. And so no woman would have sex with him because he was just constantly uproariously laughing at the very concept of it. So yeah, why are we, as I was talking about when we first started, before we started recording, why are we so funny?
Why are humans?
Yeah, what's so funny about us?
Okay, it's one of several adaptations, isn't it? I don't know that. You stumped me.
Well, I mean,
maybe it's personal, and you know, I've had tough times, and you know, I can feel the misery, and I can see a sort of humorous way around it at the same time. I don't know. This is a sort of adaptation that's open to all of us. Maybe it's this, you know, the sort of most economical and comfortable response to discomfort.
Well, how about when you describe St. Odo and he's so ugly and you describe his ugliness in such detail, but while I'm reading it, I'm laughing. And it's like a cognitive dissonance of sorts. You know, You're reading something horrible and a hideous man that you would never want to see, but at the same time, it's hilarious.
But it's a noble ugliness. He's opted to be ugly. He's just recurrently treats, you know, the sort of the ill and the disfigured, and so he gets whatever ailments they've got, and you know, it's an elective ugliness, and there's something, you know, quite noble about that. I don't know if I was trying to be funny doing that.
Well, that's what you said in the other review. Is like you're not trying to be funny, but I'm still the reader. I'm still entitled to laugh, right?
I've written books that, you know, that get completely diverse reviews. So, you know, people say it's a comic novel, and then you get reviews where there's no recognition that there's any humor involved anywhere in it. Well, I've had some reviews on Amazon and Goodreads saying, you know, actually this is just really distasteful, this, you know, because you're just making money and making currency. out of human misery, and you know, you shouldn't be doing this. Well, and you know, I defend doing it, but actually, I wrote the book before we knew anything about COVID. You know,
Really?
I finished it in the summer of 2019, and I sent it to my agent, who sent it to my existing publisher, and we haggled a bit about money, and then I think it was November we signed the contract, and then it got edited very quickly. So it was actually, you know, it was written, put to bed before we knew anything about COVID, you know, because that was sort of breaking January, wasn't it? January, February. Yeah.
And ironically, I was in Hong Kong on February 5th.
Really? Right.
And when I came back to the States, I thought, well, they're never going to let me in. And of course, the reason why we have so many cases is because they just waved me through, no mask, no temperature taking.
Have you had it?
No, my son has. And it was basically like the flu. He's, you know, he's a strong 40-year-old man.
Yeah. Okay.
But I don't, you know, it's funny because I do not know anyone beside my son who's had it, and I don't know anyone who's died of it. So it's a strange thing.
Okay, my mother-in-law just died, you know.
Because of it?
Yeah. And, you know, family have had it and friends have had it. And maybe we've been, you know, really badly affected in London, you know, because...
I also have this theory that
1 in 6 of Londoners had it.
Wow. I have this theory that the reason I don't know anyone who has it is because I have no friends. A couple of funny things that you didn't mean to be funny is when they call themselves the monks call themselves the Dingy Brothers.
Yeah.
In my mind, it sounded like an American country group, the Dingy Brothers.
Okay, there is an actual Dingy Brothers. Yeah.
Really? Oh no,
sorry.
It sounded like it, but there is a Dangy Brothers, so it's close.
Country. I like country.
Yeah, I could tell. I mean, I could tell that, and it's interesting. You do have a lot of Americanisms in the book to a certain extent. It's also interesting that none of the monks can laugh. You know, we're talking about laughter, and the monks are precluded to do so.
Yeah. It's inappropriate, isn't it? It's a lack of self-control.
Yeah, I know.
Lack of discipline, facetious approach to life.
Hey, so when you were younger, and I said we're contemporaries, did you enjoy Donovan's Hurdy Gurdy Man, that song?
I loved, yes. Yeah, maybe it wasn't one of his best, but I liked Donovan, and he was kind of sort of disregarded. I thought he was better than his reputation.
I listened to him once in concert, and he said there was a missing verse from the Hurdy Gurdy Man song because he was at the Maharishi with George Harrison.
Yeah.
And George Harrison said, "How about this?" And he gave a verse. When the truth is buried deep beneath 1,000 years of sleep, time must have a turnaround, and once again the truth is found. And then that's when the Hurdy Gurdy Man returns. I always loved that.
Do you know Patrick Gurdy?
I do, and I listened to so many of beautiful pieces on YouTube after I read the book.
Yeah.
So, why don't you describe the Hurdy Gurdy, because most Americans don't have any idea what it is.
Okay, it's a really convoluted musical instrument that sort of comes from medieval times and subsequently, and it has a wheel that you crank around that activates the strings, and it has strings you can move, and it has static strings, so you get a tune from the strings you can move and modify, and you get you get a drone and a groan from the fixed strings. So you actually you end up with this sound which is like a contest between noise and music. And it's also a sort of metaphor for chaos and order, I think. And there's something about it that's a bit like the bagpipes, that it's a bit feral and wild, whilst it's it's civilized at the same time. So it's within the book. And we in England we use it for Swedish reference to Sweden. We say, they talk like Hurdy Gurdy. So it's just, and it's a word for something that's a bit crazy or chaotic as well as being, the musical instrument.
Yeah, it's a good title. And the other thing, just incidentally, is you talk a little bit about alchemy, and you talk about abracadabra. Do you ever wonder why people are so obsessed still with the concepts of alchemy and the idea of a warding type word like abracadabra, warding away the plague? But we're still obsessed with those two things.
Yeah, I mean, alchemy is kind of right, isn't it? That actually, if you look, there are a few subatomic particles, and it's just how you arrange them that determines the difference. And everything is basically space with minute particles there, and it's just things are different because they're differently ordered particles, mainly in space. And that's what alchemy is asserting, that you can just convert one thing to another by rearranging them, I suppose.
Yeah,
there's a metaphorical truth there about what matter is and how it's put together.
Yeah, in the book, the brother says there's really no difference between cheese and granite. Or is it cheese or butter? I can't remember.
I can't remember. You asked me, there's something called the Zeigarnik Effect, which is waiters can remember exactly what everybody's ordered until they've paid, and then they haven't got a clue. So some people will say, there's this character in your book, and I think there was, because that's business over, and then then you're on to the next one.
Yeah, I read something about George R.R. Martin, who wrote The Game of Thrones, and he wrote so many books he forgot things. But there's a guy in Sweden who knows everything about the books. So when George R.R. Martin is confused as to whether the guy's shirt was, he calls him up. So what was I going to ask you? The other things that are humorous are things like when Diggory is confessing, because everyone's supposed to confess everything and to avoid the plague and to repent, and he's confessing, but he's already told Foucault about women. So I like when he gets to women and you go, no, he already knows that. So, and I don't even know why that's funny either. It was like, it's like, no, you don't need to tell me that. I already know that one. But so let's I could skip around because there's so many different things. Let's talk about, like I said, he's pivotal in a sense because he causes so much damage. Simon Mostly, how you came up with him in parts, so to speak.
Sorry, who causes damage?
Simon Mostly.
Right, because Diggory causes damage.
Right, but Simon Mostly.
Diggory is, there's something there because his self-perception is he's a plague doctor, and what he is in fact is a super spreader. So wherever he goes, he just infects the people he's purporting to cure.
But he's so naive that he lets Simon Mostly. Yeah. Yeah, and so
Simon Mostly is a sort of is a kind of a trickster figure.
Yeah, but he doesn't have all his limbs or parts. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you know Little Big Man?
Yes, by Berger.
So I borrowed it, or I've stolen it, because there's a snake cure salesman.
Yeah,
Snake in Little Big Man, and every time he reappears in the film, he's lost another bit of his body. So he's lost a hand or a leg or an arm.
And as I said earlier, the other thing
It's an homage. It's an homage.
Yeah.
So I've forgotten who wrote
Thomas Berger.
Thomas Berger, and it's a wonderful book. I think it's fabulous. It's fabulous.
It was a good movie too, I think, but I can't remember it. But oh yeah, the other source, I said earlier, is Tristram Shandy, especially when at the end he's working with the homunculuses, because but you know, in your book Diggory is born like that, but in Tristram Shandy it takes like 300 pages before he even gets born.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful book. It's but I haven't read it for ages. But
me neither. But it sticks with you. There's a book that sticks with you.
Yeah. I did it, but I did it. I've had a character that was my first book. Where somebody was incubated in a kettle, and I don't know whether that came from Tristram Shandy or.
Well, Diggory kind of does that at the end too, which was surprising. He does grow. He matures a great deal in 1 year.
But he's still completely lost.
Totally.
Women are the problem.
Yeah, women are always the problem. Talk about the bacon that turned into a pig.
Yeah, there were medieval animal trials, and there was a sort of, I don't know, a belief in demonic possession. So there's this character who's an alchemist who gets arrested, and he's called Bacon, and they hold him overnight, and in the morning all they can find is a pig in the place they'd locked him in, and a set of empty clothes. So the presumption is he's transmuted himself into a pig to mock them, but they won't let him get away with that. So they'll put him on trial. But there were these medieval animal trials where animals were still held culpable. So if a large pig killed a child, which could happen, then do you know the I've forgotten what it's called. There was a famous circus elephant that got executed in the 19th century and in America.
Yes, and Thomas Edison also killed one too, to prove that.
Yeah, just to show AC was better than.
Yeah. That's a horrible thing to do.
Put Tesla.
Yeah, Nikola Tesla, one of my favorites.
And you can see it. It's there on Google. It's there on YouTube. It's horrible.
I know, it really is.
It's just disgusting.
It's funny when Diggory had his trial, and he says, wherever I go, I happen to spread the plague.
Yeah.
I thought everyone in the courtroom would just get up and run away immediately. I was surprised that they hung around. And then his escape is quite comical too, especially when he goes back to the leper. John.
Yeah, there was a. Sorry, Anosha. Maybe you can get some protection against the plague if you kissed a leper, because it's to show reference to the example of our Lord who touched lepers, and so it was a sign of reverence, that a gesture to the Lord.
Yeah, the same gesture is, I think, recognized in Buddhism too. The same type of recognition of suffering and to embrace it to a certain extent.
Yeah.
The other thing that was interesting, and I won't give it away, are the two riddles that you pose. And I knew the answer to one, but not the other. So it took me a long time to find it on the web what the answer was. But I won't give away either one.
Very good, I think. Sorry, which is the one you know?
I can't give it away. It's the one that's that.
Okay.
But the other one is much harder.
Okay. And everything has an end except a sausage, which has two.
They always say in practice of law, they say you don't want to watch laws being made nor sausages being made. But I have watched sausages being made. It's not that bad. Laws were much worse.
Do you know there's a Roald Dahl story about a kid that's never eaten meat, and he goes to a sausage factory and gets made into sausages. And
oh yes, I remember.
It's in Point Blank as well, isn't it? Do you know Point Blank, the film?
Yeah. Yes, I haven't
One
seen
of
that.
the characters gets sausaged.
Oh, that reminds me of Cecilia, because when he catches the jackrabbit and he brings back all the wrong parts.
Yeah, they have the monks aren't allowed to eat the flesh of an animal, but they're allowed to eat the offal. So naturally, when he escapes the monastery and he kills a rabbit, he throws away the meat and takes all the offally bits to eat for his wife.
And both of his wives are quite direct in their approach to him. One makes fun of him, and the other one pretty much dominates him.
Right.